Welcome to the community that discusses all things Star Wars, Marvel, and more. Let's talk about Zack Snyder's new space opera next. Hello, my weary travelers. I'm your guide, Dave, and we're about to explore another episode of My Galaxy of Comics. We got reviews of Zack Snyder's Part 1, A Child of Fire. As I go through the reviews, I will give you my own thoughts. Before we start, make sure you Hulk smash the like button. Turn on the notifications by ringing the bell. Most of all, comment below. And let's get started. I'm going to go through two reviews of Zack Snyder's A Child of Fire, Part 1. The next episode, I think, is going to come out in April, next part. And we are going to get a Zack Snyder director's cut, which is even longer than the one we just saw by like 45 minutes, probably. So we got that to look forward to. But first things first, let's talk about a article from Forbes reviewing A Child of Fire. Let's bring that up. All right. We got rebelmoon, A Child of Fire. Let's talk about it. rebelmoon Part 1 review. Zack Snyder's Netflix space opera is a mixed bag. This is brought to you by Forbes. This is Eric Kane. Some spoilers for rebelmoon as follows. So make sure if you haven't seen rebelmoon, stop it, go watch it, come back, watch this video. I don't like to spoil things, but I will if I have to. First things first, I did not hate rebelmoon Part 1. I would agree. I did not hate it. In Child of Fire, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I came away from this movie with a mixed feelings. Then again, I have mixed feelings about the first Star Wars, which I do love. I do not have mixed feelings. I am sorry. I love it. But which is undeniably a rough draft what George Lucas and his collaborators eventually came up with across the original trilogy. rebelmoon is not a trilogy, and that's my first complaint. I am not a fan of these two-part movies. A movie should be one film or three films. Two is an awkward number, especially for what is obviously intended to be a major space opera epic. Too much and too little were attempted and achieved in Part 1. The pacing is a mess. It moves too slowly much of the time, yet the story, the important pieces like character development, are rushed through and glossed over. I'm going to agree here that you probably could have not as had many slow-mo action scenes and had them regular speed, and probably added more to the story or more character development. I lovingly call this Star Dune 300 because it has a lot of that just filth of Dune, like that grimy, oh my god, we're on a gross desert planet. But there's some of that in this because people go through hardships, but it's got the Star Wars epic New Hope type of, but with twists. We'll get into that. So it's not a knockoff. It's not a complete knockoff what we were led to believe about Star Wars. It knocked off a lot of crap, sorry, from other movies too. But 300, oh my god, except it was like 300 in space. That's what it was like to me. We'll talk about this more. My second complaint is that so much of this movie makes so little sense. Yes, I can understand how a giant space empire needs food to feed its soldiers. No, I can't see how a group of 5 or 6 warriors, even supplemented with 3 or 4 squads of rebel fighters, will be able to fight off a massive dreadnought ship and its battalions of well-armed troops. I like the twist. There's a twist, and honestly, that's why it did not. I am not going to call it a knockoff of Star Wars because there was a serious twist. There's a Han Solo type character. Again, don't want to. If you're too late, I've spoiled it already. A Han Solo type character, stabs him in the back. All right. But I thought the means by which our heroes escape quite preposterous. who designed those scorpion chair robots? They're very cool, but why would you make the paralyzing device the same as the key? And now, would the farmer gunner know that? It would have made more sense for Kai to be playing a deeper, twistier game here. Rebel Moon Part 1 functions like the beginning of Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven, or, well, the Three Amigos. A village comes under threat by a powerful enemy, and a group of rough around the edges heroes are gathered to help the villagers fight back. The problem here is scale. If Snyder had made the enemy a group of space pirates or some kind of evil space biker gang or something, fine. Even just a local officer manning this planet who cracks down too forcefully. But we're talking about a massive multi-star system force that conquered known space and is willing to throw all its might at these villagers. I don't buy it. Well, the whole idea is that the space is vast. This is one planet. They have their resources spread out everywhere, much like the Empire, which what allows rebels to start. And there's already a rebel force out there. These are just one little village that's trying to add to the already existing rebel force. So calm down, man. I agree. I mean, I slightly disagree with that. Why not? The actual gathering of heroes is also poorly paced. We get a massively extended scene of Turok breaking and then riding a space griffin with lots of Snyder slow mo to slow things down further, torn straight out of the Harry Potter hippogriff scenes. But then they find a General Titus, a slovenly drunk now, but still ripped. It's one motivational speech, and off we go. So, yeah, there's a scene where they're taming a hippogriff, basically the Bugbeak. It was stolen straight out of Harry Potter. Oh my god, it is a rip off of Harry Potter. This should be the movie. It should be called the movie with the scene that has Bugbeak the hippogriff. It, middle of in the beginning or in the first third of the movie. It was completely ripped off from Harry Potter. And which even in Harry Potter, I'm like, this thing could take off anytime, fly away, no problem. But somehow, two dudes that don't even weigh 1/10 of his weight are holding him down. Oh my gosh! And then they steal it from not Lord of the Rings, but uh, Darius Targaryen gives the slave owners a dragon, right, in that TV show, and then the dragon kills the slave owner. Well, that's exactly what happens with the hippogriff. Kills the slave owner. Steal that straight out of that TV show. So Daenerys Targaryen, they steal it from her, steal it from Harry Potter. Oh my gosh, come on. Rebel Moon is basically a PG-13 Star Wars in a lot of ways. You won't hear that kind of language in a galaxy far, far away, or even scenes with attempted sexual assault, but it's never as charming or funny. The characters aren't terrible, but the most likely among them ends up being a bad guy. There's not nearly enough comic relief, which directors like Snyder seem to never realize helps us care and bond with characters so that we can care more when bad things happen to them. Comic relief helps create tension. I agree. There's not as much comic relief in this. They could have added it. They could have added it. I mean, the main character is pretty stiff, badass, and this is one of those movies where the lead character, unlike the sequels, where they made the person become a badass immediately, right? And she takes and she knows how to wield a lightsaber and all that. Ray. Uh, this one, there's a backstory. She's already gone through those trials. We're actually meeting her after she had become this trained killer through many battles. So I feel good about this story rather than Ray being what they call a Mary Sue, or she all of a sudden becomes just amazing at everything with no training. Well, the backstory here has her already being a badass because she's gone through so many battles because there's flashbacks and stuff. I do like that character building. But again, it's just piled together into this um one movie, right? There could have been, again, I kind of agree, it could have been a trilogy and we could have learned more about her throughout this movie instead of going into this three amigos, let's get the band together type thing. I could go on and on about all the things that didn't make sense in this movie, but the long and short of it is simple. With a little more time and a stronger script, this could have been a tremendous space opera. Instead, it was merely enjoyable. I didn't find it half so terrible as the reviews made it sound. All the most movies ever, worst movies ever. Talk seems rather over the top and breathless to me. I agree. I agree. In fact, I'd say I like this more than any Snyder's film since the old days of 300, Watchmen, and The Dawn of the Dead. Sure, it's a derivative. So is Star Wars. I'm fine with derivative works, especially in the sword and planet genre. John Carter was around long before Dune. I don't begrudge Frank Herbert for riffing off Edgar Rice Burroughs or George Lucas, and I like Carter, Mars movie. I liked it. Lucas riffing off the Herbert and Akira Kurosawa or Zack Snyder riffing off all of the above. I've had my own ideas for Sword and Planet and samurai stories. We're all influenced by millions of things. The problem with Rebel Moon is that it doesn't do enough to establish itself as something unique and coherent. Maybe that will change when we have part two, but I wish Snyder had come up with some better hooks, some more obvious ways to make this universe special and distinct rather than just a hodgepodge of other people's ideas. And yet, at this same time, it felt mostly very capable as a somewhat darker, edgier Star Wars. Wooden characters and flimsy plots aside, I enjoyed the action, was mostly entertained throughout. If anything, it suffered from many of the same problems the sequel trilogies suffered from, which were often pacing issues. Recall, the original Star Wars trilogy did such a great job at two things. First, it gave us great characters we cared about. Second, it spent meaningful time establishing a sense of place in each of its films. We got to know planets like Tatooine, Dagobah, Hoth, and the moon of Endor, the Death Star, Cloud City, and so forth. In the sequel trilogy and in Rebel Moon, the places we go are barely established at all and utterly forgettable. The characters have potential, but we hardly scratch the surface. That's what they're saying. That's what I was saying earlier. Spend more time on developing these characters and not and the planets for that matter. Get to know them rather than, oh, let's slow this battle scene down to a crawl. But it was cool. But again, if you gonna do that slow mo stuff, make it three movies, spread it out, give me more depth into these characters. Still, I like them for the most part. I like Sophia Botella's Korra. I almost titled this review "The Legend of Korra," though I wish Snyder had picked better ways to reveal her past to us than a long exposition laden flashbacks. Didn't mind that as much, but yeah, spend a little more time. Maybe start with it and flash forward 10 years or whatever it was. Charlie Hunnam's Kai was a lot of fun, though he, like all the others, gets a little lost in the mix of introducing so many characters in short span. That's a Han Solo type character. The robot Jimmy is an instant favorite thanks to the wonderful voice work of Anthony Hopkins. Here's what I said about Anthony Hopkins. I would rather have had a droid voice, like Rogue One, the guy that played him, and I sorry about the actor who played him. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But have Anthony Hopkins as a droid voice, I was a little like I wanted Anthony Hopkins to be like the original elder of the that's now retired and has passed on the lead to the uh guy, the leader that gets killed at the beginning of the village. I would rather had him be like a character like that than a droid. But hey, let me see. He seems like he's going to play a big part in part two. maybe I changed my mind. I do like at the end, he's now got like an antler crown on his head. Looks like a pretty big badass. This is a picture of him here. Uh, Digimon Hansu's General Titus didn't get enough screen time at all. Perhaps half of these characters should have been introduced in the second movie. In the fictional trilogy, I wish this was the Michael Huseman's Gunnar and Bay Donna's sword wielding nemesis, not to mention the surprisingly sympathetic spider monster lady she fights. That was creepy though, that spider monster. But why don't they just all attack the damn spider monster, right? No, they let one person fight it. Yeah, it would have been quick and easy if everybody fought the thing, right? They had freaking pew pews. Let's go. Ed Skrein makes a terrific villain as Admiral Atticus Noble, even if it was a walking cliche in better dressed Star Wars Imperial. I don't think they were better dressed, man. I mean, it was all Nazi, and overblown Nazi. I much rather have the subtle hint of what Star Wars Empire looked like with their uniforms. I'd much rather have that. You don't have to have stormtrooper gear like that, but hey, maybe have some, um, guys with armor, stuff like that. Why not? Meanwhile, the special effects, sound design, costumes, and cinematography were all top notch. Yeah, I agree. You could tell a lot of green screen. I really like the film's take on laser blasters with the pop holes right through people. Nemesis swords aren't quite light sabers. They look like that in the trailer. Rather, they're normal swords that heat up into glowing fire blades. I just wish that all this attention to detail had been given a little more room to breathe, which is a sentiment I hold toward the characters and the dialogue as well. I suppose much of my enjoyment here is probably due to the exceptionally low expectations I came into the movie with. True. I mean, it was panned, it was hated. And then I go in and I'm like, okay, it's not so bad, right? I was fully expecting it to be dreadful at every turn, but it was more like a fast food cheeseburger. Not bad, really just nothing particularly unique, and not the type of burger you'd get on a date. I enjoy a date. Yeah. Me and my wife get burgers, so I guess yeah, okay. I enjoy a fast food burger from time to time, though. It can really hit the spot. Rebel Moon scratched that space opera itch I always have in the same way John Carter did. I love John Carter. Honestly, I loved it. I did. I felt so bad that it bombed. And I didn't even know the story. It was the first time being introduced to it was the movie. And I'm like, this is pretty good. It is a little far fetched that they got flying, you know, flying sun machines or whatever. But yeah, why not on Mars? And you can breathe? Okay. Um, bombed the critics and audiences and did it without the force. It's no Andor by any means, but it's really no worse than the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I enjoyed it more than the prequels. At least there's no Jar Jar Binks. True story. I don't know if I think the prequels are getting more and more love than in years past. So I don't know if I'm going to say that. There's a lot of characters in the prequels I care much more about than the ones in this movie, but I won't go that far. I'm definitely going. I consider it entertainment like I do the prequel or the sequels. I don't love the sequels. There's so much wrong with the sequels. Oh my god, don't get me started. But I have entertainment value, and this gave me entertainment value just with a PG-13 appeal to it. I'm definitely going to watch part two, and I'm genuinely curious to see what happens. I'll probably even watch the director's cut when that comes out, though it should have just been that version from the start, for goodness sake. Yes. Well, you know what? The good thing about the director's cut is that he can see what people say about this one and maybe tweak it, right? So uh, that's probably good. And I still haven't seen the Snyder cut of the Justice League, which is something I didn't have to stomach for the Justice League, he says. Okay. He gives it a score 3 out of 5. Rebel Moon is entertaining but flawed space opera with some great action and cinematography. That would have been better as the first part of an R-rated trilogy. Hopefully, part two builds on an opening film's strengths. I would I would not complain if this became a larger franchise with more room to grow in a universe that shape it into something more unique. What do you think about Rebel Moon? Okay, take some time. Go down in the comments. Tell me what you think of Rebel Moon. Tell me what you think about this review. He compares it a lot to Star Wars. Do you? I Sure. Yeah, the beginning. A lot about Star Wars. Except like the I mean, it's in the New Hope, the Empire's already there, right? It's already there. This time we're seeing it show up for the first time. So that's different. I find that different. The Han Solo type character is a bad guy. Turns out and sells them out basically. So they got that. That's different. There's a lot of difference. A lot of difference from this. Yeah, sure, they got laser swords, but these are like fire swords, I guess. They got creatures, but kind of stolen from other movies. So there's a cantina scene basically. Yeah, there's a lot of things I can see why you'd say it's Star Wars, but then I think it kind of goes on its own. Here's the one of the issues I have is there is a saying basically, show it, don't tell it, and they do a lot of telling in this thing. Like at the end, the general at the end, the drunken general, whatever, at the end, uh, he tells everybody they're all standing on the edge, looking out into the abyss of whatever the planet is, and like this is a big deal. This is gonna start a rebellion. Everybody's gonna know about this. Star Wars, they would have showed people finding out about this, and they did. And even in the pre sequels of the second movie, they showed people hearing about what was going on. Like it spread out that rebellion or the resistance was spreading. Show that. Don't tell it. Make it more interesting. Make it more oh my god, this is amazing. All these people are finding out about this. They're rising up. Show that. Don't just do something lazy and say, "Oh, let's have this character give a motivational speech," at the end of the movie and say, "Oh, people are going to find out about this and rise up." And no, show us, don't tell us. That was my big complaint. They did a lot of telling and not showing. So here's a variety article. I hope this one's not too long. Yeah, this one's let's go through this one. I like to do one more reviews. Rebel Moon writer explains that cliffhanger ending that confronts the bad reviews. This isn't an IP. This is an original history. So the writer of Rebel Moon kind of explains this, and that's why I wanted to do this one. Is like, hey, there's some explanation of what's going on. See this picture here of them just standing around. This is TV show type crap, right? This isn't epic movie, um, poster type of stuff. This guy right here dies, and like he's not continuing on. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they do maybe they do cyborg him or something later. They don't show his dead body, I guess. They show him about to die though, and they pan away. They don't actually show him dying, I don't think. But this story contains major spoilers for Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, now streaming on Netflix. Warning, warning. All right. Kurt Johnstad and Zack Snyder first start talking about creating Rebel Moon in 1997 in college. Snyder came up with the idea of a Dirty Dozen movie set in space, and the two would discuss their favorite films as a launching point for their eventually became sci-fi world of Rebel Moon. What's your favorite science fiction movie? And these are quotes. Oh, Star Wars, or I would say Seven Samurai. We would always hit these really cinematic wavelengths. Certainly, as a child with cinema who went to all the movies, all those influences, we can't deny the impact. And you know what? I gotta watch Samurai because I've never seen it, and that's been the inspiration for Star Wars. So after a long process that involved Snyder initially pitching the movie to Lucasfilms as a Seven Samurai inspired Star Wars story, their vision finally came to life with Netflix's two-part space epic set in a completely original universe. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, debuted on the streamer in December 21st, and Rebel Moon Part 2. The Scar Giver will be released April 19th, day before my birthday, April 20th, 420. Um, Part 2, The Scar Giver, will be released on April 19th, 2024. Two R-rated director's cuts will also be released at a later date. Why not? You know what? I can tell you, I like this better than Dune. I tried to watch Dune, the most recent one. I couldn't get through it. I couldn't get through it. I don't know. I am not a Dune fan. Sorry, everybody. I will not be doing reviews of Dune on this show. I just can't get through it. Oh, and what a bunch of great actors in it, too. But I just cannot get through that story. It's not appealing to me. Rebel Moon takes place in a galaxy ruled by the Mother World. The Imperium, its military threatens a farming colony, and I call it. It wasn't the Mother World or the Mother. Yeah, the Mother World. I didn't really hear it called the Imperium much. Its military threatens a farming colony in the moon Velt, where former Imperium member Cora Sophia Botella lives. Like her, I like her. This sparks her to take action against the Mother World, recruiting a team of rebels with various planets. But once their squad is assembled, Kai, Charlie Hunnam, the mercenary pilot from Korra picked up along the way, turns them over to the Mother World, resulting in a battle between rebels and the Imperium. Despite the loss of insurgency leader Darian Bloodaxe Ray Fisher, the rebels come out largely victorious, and with Korra defeating Imperium leader Admiral Noble Ed Screen. As the team heads back to Velt, the final moment of the film revealed that the Mother World was brought Noble back to life, and their fight against the Imperium is only just beginning. Jonah Stead, who wrote the screenplay with Snyder and Shay Hatten, sat down with Variety to discuss the splitting the movie into two parts, that twist ending, and its thoughts on a negative critical reception. Zack Snyder said he originally wrote Rebel Moon as a single film. How did splitting the film into two parts impact structure of the story? So here we go. When he had that 200-page script, that was the story that Zach wanted to tell. We tried cutting back and sundering through the script. It got down to like 136 pages, and Zach just read it and was like, all this world building is getting sacrificed here, and all the characters are taking a hit. We need to find a solution because the version of the movie isn't interesting to me. The challenge was to go back to a big draft, and then how do we make two movies? I really thought they were only going to make the first movie and we would just have the second movie on a shelf sitting there, just like in Success. We'll get to do it one day. And then Zach convinced them, I'm gonna shoot both movies back to back, and Netflix went for it. We'll see. I mean, it got bad reviews, but I'll watch it again. We'll get to see what the results are. I mean, was it worth it? I don't know how Netflix makes money off of these movies. They spend so much money doing them. To get into specifics of the ending, how did you come up with the idea to have Noble come back to life at the end? That's Zach's idea. I'd love to take credit for that. We're introducing bigger, broader themes in Mother World, his connection for Balsarius, the astral plane, which we haven't really seen a lot. It's something like that we'll see further, how they can move through time and space, a very science fiction or science fantasy trope. What happened here? We just thought it was so satisfying to see Noble or Ed get knocked off that buoy, and for her to standing there victorious, to have our heroes thinking that they're riding off and something's going to be okay. And then this guy's like unkillable and he's out there still hunting them. That was pretty cool idea. Does Cora know about these revitalizing capabilities given her past in the Motherworld Imperium? I think she's being hopeful that Noble is dead, but I think she knows how powerful the Motherworld is. And she also knows that there's not going to be peace in the valley very long, even if it's not that dreadnought. Another dreadnought is going to come looking. She's on the run, and she'll always be on the run until she faces who she needs to face. How did you come up with the decision to have Kai betray the group? This is I'm gonna want to know. I want to know here because he could have been a very popular character. It was a collective decision thinking that we needed something to turn that third act. I don't remember how we got to it. That's really the tricky thing with writing something. Zach and I have been working together for almost 30 years. We've been friends for 30. We found writing together for 25, a little bit like alchemy. We're trying to turn these 10 leading thoughts with golden thoughts, and then all of a sudden, leaden thoughts. Something reveals itself, and we're like, oh, Wouldn't that be interesting? And one of the people of the building this team, all of a sudden betrays him. That's what they came from. Heartbreakingly, we said to Charlie, "Maybe you're a twin," which is not the case. But we're like, how are we going to get Charlie back in the movie? He's so fun. I also wanted to ask about seeing maybe he coming back. I was thinking that because they didn't show him die. They didn't show him die. They saw him get that thing up his neck, but you didn't. I don't know. I also wanted to ask him, seeing Jimmy again at the end with those deer antlers, what was up with that? Oh yeah, let's find out. Let's find out. Jimmy has a much bigger story in those extended cuts and certainly in the second movie. Okay, so we're gonna get more of Jimmy. And we're gonna find out more of Jimmy. It's a little bit like Jimmy goes from the sentient robot to really becoming a little more human and then goes a little feral. Oh, so he's a feral, like a cat. When everybody is being collected and the team's getting built, he's running around the woods being like a feral creature and hunting and sitting by the brook, catching fish, doing Jimmy things out of the woods. So that's where the crown of antlers comes from. He eats? I don't know. I don't know about that. There's a lot of commentary about Star Wars comparisons, given that Zach originally pitched rebelmoon as a Star Wars story. How do you feel about those connections people are making with the film? It's impossible not to be compared to Star Wars. They're very different worlds. We're trying to do very different things. I have great respect for George Lucas and everything he's done for 50 years. He's changed the shape of the entire town. So we can't say that we haven't been affected or haven't absorbed some of those lessons. It's cinematically those experiences. It'd be false and we'd be lying. The idea is, if given our own opportunity, just like George was a complete rebel in this town and an iconoclast, but how can we do the same thing in our time? That isn't written mandate, but it's like, oh, how can I write this most provocative, inspiring, interesting twist and turn kind of a story? George used Campbell's hero's journey, and as did we. This is Cora's story, and she's a heart of the movie. True, and I'm glad. I like that she's the main character. She was already a badass starting this movie. She's already been a warrior. She had a love story before. She's brokenhearted, basically. So, and there's a twist I know that's coming, and you'll watch the movie and you'll recognize how one blonde girl look a lot like another blonde girl, but I'm not going to talk about that. I think sometimes we're having fun with it. We've named characters like Milas after John Milas because he written some of the great movies of the last 50 years. There's things like that. Like, we'll be given give you a nod, but then there are things that just become their own thing. Zach is trying to do something very different here that really hasn't been done in a long time. This isn't an IP. This is an original story. It's being created by hundreds, if not thousands, of technicians. That's a really bold thing. He, as a filmmaker, takes big swings on every film, and it's fun to watch somebody who has enough confidence internally in himself to take those kinds of swings in the material that he puts out there in this world. Some critics have used those influences, connections to other films as a critique. How do you feel about the reception the film has received so far? I don't read the reviews. I never have. Critics have a job to do. We live in a democracy. Everybody gets to vote. If people watch a film, they have an experience and they will either enjoy it or they won't. It's flavors of ice cream. In my career of 20 years doing this, reviews that never equated to performance. A movie will either perform or it won't. People either love it and be connected to it. And I think that's the movie has an emotional drive and core and characters that are vulnerable. And of course, there's sequence and action and visual. It's a magnificent looking film, but I think that at the core of it, it's got emotion. There's an emotional engine and currency that runs through the film, and I think works. So I've invited people to check it out. That's it, man. That is rebelmoon, A Child of Fire Part One. My overall impression of it is I was entertained by it. I watching it after reading the reviews. It There was Star Wars stuff in it, but the story was different. How things came to be. They didn't run around finding a group of people. This is a team together to go fight to go inspire a rebellion. the rebellion is already happening, but this is just making it bigger. This is the infancy stages of it. Star Wars: A New Hope. There was already a rebellion for years. They were just joining the rebellion. I'm I was pretty so, and then the Han Solo characters that betrays them. Um, you know the main character was part of it, and now, and like, Luke Skywalker had no clue, that he was his dad was a part of it, right? So it's different. The main character is the already knows, is already, attuned to what's going on in the world or in the universe. So there's a lot of things different about this than Star Wars. So I can appreciate that. It has a Dune feel to it, but because of the weird things they do steal, like, the Bacta tank stuff from Star Wars, but made it different. The bug beak scene made it exactly the same as Harry Potter. I don't get that one. Um, I like it. I'll tune in again. I do not like Dune. I love Star Wars. So this is much more on my scale of of liking a movie than not liking a movie. So I am interested to see what Jimmy's gonna do. Um, what the next step is. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be. I think the Snyder cut is gonna make this movie better. People will warm up to it, but the bad reviews have basically tanked this movie, and it sucks because they have so much planned for this. I would love another IP out there. I would love games, and I would love Avatar type of stuff, man. That kind of make this an Avatar, to look forward to something to come out again, because it was so visually pleasing. So many good actors in it. Um, these are already. That's another thing. These are already actors that are known, that we've seen before. When in, like, Star Wars, it's like, oh my gosh, these are new people. Like, where are these people coming from? These people were already existing actors that were already had probably reputations. I feel I It was kind of a neat, and it's Anthony Hopkins. What the hell? You bring these actors together and create something beautiful. And I think they did that. They just needed to do more storytelling. They didn't build the characters up like they should have. Spend more time doing that. Introduce us to the worlds. They should have made. That's the thing. Netflix, are they going to want to make 3 movies? So, to give Zack Snyder some credit, I don't have the time to do that. They don't have enough faith in this. I can't press 3 movies out of something out of thin ice that was already rejected, by Lucasfilms. This was risky. This was so risky, and that's why I appreciate it, and that's why I'm gonna give it time. I don't know about you guys. Hey, this is Dave, your guide through my galaxy of comics. Thank you. Make sure you do some things for me. Make sure you smash that like button, ring the bell, turn on the notifications so you get more of my contact. And that's it for today. This is my Galaxy Comics. Cue the music.